Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, hopefully, my sound is audible to everyone. We welcome everyone for today's Bhagavat Live program, wherein we are reading from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we'll be discussing the second chapter of the second canto. Before we begin with that, let us offer prayers together and then we'll begin our discussion today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udhirayat nashta prayeshu bhatreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhakte bhavati nashtaki krishnaya vasudevaya devaki nandanaya cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinami Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatadi Shatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Rotase Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopikakanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvabhanu Sute Pranami Harite Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. We are on the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which began with a question asked by Parishit Maharaj to Sukadeva Goswami. This question was raised in the first canto, 19th chapter, when Parishit Maharaj was informed by Shaunakadi, by our Sabik Rishi, through his disciple. He had sent a messenger or a disciple to convey the message of how he has been cursed unwarrantedly by his son Shringi due to his arrogance, who decided to curse Parishit for his no fault. Nonetheless, it was the duty of the sage to inform and help the king to prepare for the ultimate end. Parishit Maharaj accepted the curse, left the kingdom, went to the bank of Jamuna and sat down to practice bhakti yoga or to perform meditation at the lotus feet of the Lord. That was his aspiration and intention. Hearing this, the Parishit Maharaj has left his kingdom and have gone to sit down at the bank of the Jamuna. Sages from all over the world began to assemble. And there, Parishit Maharaj wholeheartedly welcomed all the sages, and thereafter Parishit Maharaj inquired from those sages what should be the duty of a dying man, what should be the dharma, or what should a dying man should do. And thereafter began a discussion between all the sages. However, all the sages could not come to a conclusion. Why they could not come to conclusion? Because the sages, all those different sages were having a faith or were having a different practice. Some were Ashtang yogis, some believed in Karma Kanda, like they were Brahmanas, some were yogis, some were sages, etc., etc. There were different categories of sages who had assembled there. And finally, nobody could answer. And as we know, after a short while, Sukdev Goswami appeared, who everyone anonymously accepted as their leader. And then Parishit Maharaj posed a similar question to Sukdev Goswami: what should be the duty of a dying man? And with that, second canto begins. Varyane shate prashna kutaloko hitam napaha atmavissamataha pumsam shrotavyadeshu yattaraha. What a question you have asked, Parishit Maharaj. Sukdev Goswami glorifies like this. And he says, only not I am saying, Krita loko hitam napa. This question, the answer to it will be beneficial for everyone. Not only I am saying this, Atmavis samataha pumsam. All the sages, all the self-realized person would agree, would say that the only subject matter worth hearing, Shrotavya Dishu Yahapara, only subject matter worth hearing is about what you have asked. And what is that subject matter? What is the answer? Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shrotavya Kititavyascha Smartavyas Ichchata Bhayam. The answer to your question is Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari. What should one do? What is the duty of a dying man? Everyone should hear about Krishna, should chant about Krishna, and should remember about Krishna, because only this would make us one free, Ichchata Abhayam, would make one fearless, or would award fearlessness to an individual. This is the fifth verse of first chapter of second canto, but we know that afterwards a lot of discussion happened in the first chapter. What is the discussion that happens? Sukdev Goswami, understanding there are people assembled here with a different mindset, he wanted to raise everyone's consciousness and bring it at the platform of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he began to speak about different paths. In the first chapter, he began to speak about Ashtang Yoga. Ashtang Yoga, Asht means 8, Anga means limbs. A yoga practice that has 8 limbs: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So, wherein through Yama, Niyama, rules and regulation, do's and don'ts, Yama, Niyama, Asana, sitting in a proper position, Pranayam, control on the breathing, Pratyahara, regulation of senses, Dharana. So, very important part of Ashtang Yoga or for an Ashtang Yogi is to have an object which he makes as Dharana Ashraya, where he focuses or meditates. So, Parishit Maharaj asked about it in the first chapter. And there, Sukdev Goswami said there are 2 varieties of Ashtang Yogis. One is the Kanishta and second is an advanced yogi. Kanishta Dikari or Kanishta Ashtang Yogi is one who cannot, whose mind is yet filled or contaminated by material desires. So for him, Dharana Ashraya is the Virat Roop. What is Virat Roop? This is a temporary form of the Lord which pervades the entire universe, or to put it other way around, the entire universe pervades in this form. We'll read about this. We already saw that in the first chapter, a little bit description about it, and again it will come later on in the second canto and then in the third canto also. So, what is the meaning of Virat Purusha? Through you perceive through your gross senses, you cannot see the Lord's spiritual form, but through gross senses you see this world, which is also made up of Bhumi, Rapa, Nala, Vayu. So through that you see the Lord, you perceive the Lord, just like the river is said to be the veins, the bloodline of the Lord. The sun and the moon are said to be the eyes of the Lord, like that. So like that, this Ashtang Yogi, who is a neophyte sadhaka, makes an advancement. Now, in this chapter, the discussion continues. This chapter, second chapter, Sukdev Goswami talks about 3 categories of people. One is a neophyte, this Ashtang Yogi, neophyte Ashtang Yogi. Dharana Ashraya has been described. And then he will describe in this chapter what happens after death. How does he make advancement back to Godhead? Second, he will talk about in this chapter about what is the Dharana Ashraya of an advanced yogi and how post-death he goes back home, back to Godhead. And third, Sukadeva Goswami will talk about intelligent men. Interestingly, he calls intelligent men, which means Ashtang yogis are not intelligent because they're going through a lot of trials and tribulation. All this Ashtang yoga, etc., Jnana yoga, Hatha yoga, Dhyana yoga, all this depends on one's endeavor. Bhakti yoga depends on Lord's mercy. The duty of a sadhaka is to take shelter of the Guru and Gauranga, and then as one receives the mercy, to that degree one makes advancement. However, the result and the process that one follows in the sadhana bhakti or bhakti yoga path, both are same. It's not that only when you get the result, when you get moksha, then only you experience the bliss. Even the path is blissful. Chant, dance, and eat your way. Go back home, back to Godhead is a formula Srila Prabhupada gave us, isn't it? What can be more simpler than that? So these are the three things about three categories of people Sukadeva Goswami will talk about. However, this chapter begins with where Parishit Maharaj got a question in his mind. My dear Sukadeva Goswami, is there any success story of any individual who meditated on the Virat Roop and he became successful? So second canto, second chapter, the second chapter of second canto begins with the first verse where the success story is defined. Before we get into this discussion, just a disclaimer for all of you. A little bit pampering has been done in the first canto. Pampering means storytelling. All right? Now, there is going to be some serious discussion. All the participants are expected to be matured sadhakas in their consciousness. There won't be any more pampering, which means there won't be any more storytelling. There will be direct philosophical discussions. So, therefore, I said to keep your camera is compulsory part of this course. So I can see who's awake, who is sleeping. All right? Anyways, I'm just joking. If you're doing something, then it's all right. I know it's a morning time. Some of you might be busy eating breakfast or cooking breakfast. So either way is fine. But it's good if you keep your camera on, so your mind will not cheat you. Okay? So philosophical discussion is what we begin with. So let's begin with our discussion for today. Let me open my Bhagavatam, then I also share the slide with all of you. My Vedavis. Is it visible? Is anyone on Zoom here?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Very,
It is
very
visible.
clear, Prabhu.
Vedabase is available, right? Yeah, great. Shri Shukra. I'm not going to read all the verses, but I'll just read few verses. Are you seeing Vedabase or what?
Yes, Prabhuji, Veda base, yes.
Okay. Because I cannot see what you can see right now. All right. Shri Shukavacha Evam Puradharin Atmayone Nashta Smritim Pratyabhutya Tushtat Tatha Sasrejidam Amoga Drishte Yatha Payad Pragvai Vasaya Buddhi El. So Shri Shukavacha Sukadeva Goswami said, very interesting verse. We'll discuss about this, the story, or the background story which is being highlighted here in the third canto when the discussion comes. So what is happening here? Evam pura dharana atma yonir. So evam pura. So just in the same way, pura, before this manifestation took place. So what happens when Brahmaji goes to sleep every evening, every night, then there is a pralay that happens in this creation that is called as Naimatika pralay. During Naimatika pralay, the Patal Lok, the Bhuvar Lok, and Swarg Lok, up to there, everything gets destroyed. And when Brahmaji wakes up, what he sees himself, that he is floating in an ocean wave, and there's a heavy windstorm going on, and there is water everywhere, and he's sitting on a lotus, which is, moving around in that whirlpool or whirlwind like that. And Brahmaji, when he wakes up, he has forgotten everything, even to an extent, who is he? That's what has been described. Evam pura dharan atma yonir. Atma yonir means self-manifested. Nashtam smritim, who lost his smriti. Pratyabhuratya, but he regained his smriti. Tushtat, once he pleased. Tushtat, the Supreme Personality. Please, Tushtat means tushti, to please. Tatha sasarj idam amogadashti. And therefore, by regaining his consciousness, sasarja idam, he again created this universe, or again created or did the work of creation. Amoga Drishti, because he got Amoga Drishti, flawless vision. Yatha Payat Prag Vayavasa Buddhi, and therefore, by performing meditation on the Virat Rup, this verse talks about Brahma meditated on the Virat Rup of the Lord, therefore he got that Vayavasaya Buddhi and Amoga Drishti. Sukadeva Goswami, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rup, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus, he was able to build the creation as it was before. So, very beautiful purport. Some key points which are mentioned here, I'll just highlight, and some lessons for us. So, what is mentioned in this shloka is forgetfulness of Brahmaji. Nashtam smritim. So when Brahmaji appeared in the morning, he forgot about everything. Similarly, in this material creation, whenever a living entity takes birth, Nashtam smritim, he does not have any memory, any remembrance of his past life. Forget about past life, even he does not have any remembrance of his activities in the spiritual world. We don't have any remembrance of it. Similarly, Brahmaji was under complete forgetfulness. This is the nature of the material world. But how did he regain his consciousness? That is the important thing. He regained his consciousness by meditating on the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada highlights in the purport, for all this forgetful living entities, the only way for them to regain their eternal consciousness is by engaging in bhakti yoga, is by engaging in devotional service to the Lord. By that only we can understand and remember our constitutional position. Second thing Prabhupada mentioned, the purport, very beautiful definition of liberation. Again, mukti is defined differently in different contexts. Prabhupada at the end of the purport says, mukti means, liberation means waking up. And what do you do by waking up? Engaging in the service of the Lord. Waking up and engaging in the service of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada have given us a system through the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, where if we follow the system, every day we have an opportunity to act on the platform of Mukta Jiva. What is the system? Every day you wake up, engage in Mangalarti, engage in Japa, Shavanam, Kirtanam, Guru Puja, etc. And then if you're a householder, you're a working man, go out and perform your duty as a service to the Lord. Take care of your family, take care of your Krishna consciousness, come back and go and take rest again. So somebody who wakes up and engages in the devotional service of the Lord is also called as Mukti. And that's what happens. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana Sochatina Kankshati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madha Bhakti Labhate Param. When the person goes beyond these three modes of material nature, what happens? Na Sochati na Kankshati. He has no more hankering, no more desires. And what he does at that platform? Madha Bhakti Labhate Param. That is what is mentioned, and that is what an opportunity is given to us also. All right, let's move forward. Text number 2. Now, from text number 2 onwards, there is a little discussion which begins from text number 2 to text number 7. So as we were discussing, there are different kind of audience present in front of Sukadeva Goswami, although the main hearer is Parishit Maharaj, but there are other listeners also. So now, considering those Brahmanas who are proponent of Karma Kanda philosophy, how Karma Kanda is the best, considering those Brahmanas, for the benefit of those Brahmanas, Sukadeva Goswami begins to speak about Karma Kanda from verse number 2 to verse number 7. And what he says about Karma Kanda? Only one thing, is complete useless. Stop wasting your time. That's the point. All right? We'll explain. Let's take a look at this verse. Shabdasya hi brahmana esha panta yannam bhedhyayati thera partehe paribrahmam satra na vindate artha maya vasanaya shayanayaha. So here, in this shloka, I'll not go word to word, it'll take a lot of time. We're already at 22. I'll come to the translation directly. So this verse is almost similar to, let me just quote Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, verse number 42-43. What does Krishna say in 2nd chapter Bhagavad Gita 42-43? Yamima pushpita vacham rodanti avipashyita vedavadata pata nanyadasthiti vadina Very famous verse of this second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says people are attracted, foolish people are attracted to the flowery language of Vedas. Yam imam pushpitam vacham, flowery language. Pravadantiya vipashyata, Vedavatata, and those people are called as Vedavata Rataha Partha. Naya Anyat Astiti Vadinha. But being attracted to this flowery language of the Vedic scriptures, they miss out on the purpose of the Vedic scriptures. What is the purpose of Vedic scriptures? Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chaham Sarvasya Cham Hiti Sannivishto Matasmat Jnanam Apohanam Cha Vedaischa Sarve Raham Eva Vedyo Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chaham. So what is the purpose of Vedas? To understand Krishna. So what is this flowery language of Vedic scriptures which is being described? And that is what is being spoken in this verse, second verse also, which talks about you do such and such ritual, you'll accrue piety, and it will help you to go back, not to Godhead. It will help you to go to Indralok. And at Indralok, you'll find a special drink called as Soma juice. Drink Soma juice, watch Apsaras Nritya or dance, enjoy your life. No, it doesn't work like that. The shloka says, the conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures. They do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. Even Indra is dissatisfied. What is evidence Indra is dissatisfied? 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about divine and demonic, where Krishna says two kinds of living entities always exist in this world. One is divine, other is demoniac. Who is divine? Those who are called as devatas, those who are subordinate to Lord Shri Krishna. Who are asuras? Sur, those who follow scriptures, followers of Vishnu. Asur, those who are against Vishnu. So there is always, eternally there is a conflict going on between Sur and Asur. Not only between India and Pakistan, not between one religion and another religion. Even in the heavenly kingdom, there is an eternal conflict going on, and so many times we read in Srimad Bhagavatam where Indra gets terrified and he runs away from his kingdom on the fear of his life. Even in Swargalok, the conflict does not end. So if you are disturbed, what is happening in the world, there is conflict going on, there is a massacre going on, this and that fight is going on. Even in Swargalok, that continues to happen. Therefore, it is said this is totally useless. Even you don't find happiness there. Happiness in Swargalok can be compared to happiness that is there in the mind of an aspirant who is aspiring to go to America. Whoever has gone to America, before he goes to America, he also undergoes this illusory happiness. I am one of the victims of that. I went to America as a student, and the life there is entirely different. You know, you see Hollywood movies and whatnot, and you think, oh, American life will be so fantastic and whatnot. There's no struggle, no conflict, nothing. No, it's very terrible. The first day you enter there, you get to the reality. That is what has been discussed about. So we may not have an experience of Swargaloka, but the sages say it's useless. And the history in Srimad Bhagavatam that you read about, there's always conflict going on. At the end of the day, you still have to die. It's not that you can live eternally. So similarly, if you talk about America, people are so excited about America. So excited about America. Oh, there is a better living standards, better facility for healthcare, and you have better finances and whatnot and everything. But it's not the truth actually. It may be for some. And for those who have that, it is only because they're good karma. And they're exhausting their good karma. Once they exhaust their good karma, they'll also become bankrupt. Like that it goes on. And that is what is being described in this verse. Let's go forward. So, heavenly pleasures are useless. Text number 3. So, what should be the lifestyle of those people who are intelligent and who understand karma kanda is useless? That is text number 3. What is that? Atha kave namasu yavadartha syat apramato vaivasaya buddhi siddhi anyathartina te tatra parishramam tatra samikshamana. So here it is said, Atha kavir, one who is intelligent, namasu yavadartha. Yavadartha, so the very important verse, it talks about way of living. How should be our lifestyle? Yavadartha means minimum. An intelligent person only endeavors to acquire the bare minimum for his life. Syad apramato. Pramato means madness. Apramato gives up the madness. What is that giving up madness? Gives up madness for material comfort and material possessions. Vaivasaya buddhi. And when somebody loves like this, when somebody does like this, Then he gets up a fixed up consciousness. Fixed up consciousness for what? Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekhe gurunamada. Vyavasayatmika buddhi means then he becomes fixed in his Krishna conscious action. Siddhi an yathartena yateta tatra parantu kintu. But a person who endeavors to acquire material pleasures, bhoga aishwarya prasaktanam, parishramam tatra samikshamanha, all that endeavors is totally useless. So very, very beautiful purport where Prabhupada talks about what is the way of living for a materialist and what is the way of living for a devotee. It's a big purport. Please mark it as a 5-star purport. Please do read it out. Very beautiful purport. I'll give you a small story, an example, a real life example, and you'll understand what is being discussed here today. So here we are talking about a way of living, a simple way of living, being satisfied with the bare necessity so that our attention, our mind can focus on Krishna consciousness. Wonderful disciples of Srila Prabhupada by the name of Pritushava Prabhu, if I'm correct with the name of the husband. The mother's name is Madan Sundar. Graduate of MIT, they live near in the suburbs of Chicago. When I was there in America, I had the privilege to meet with them. All their life, since the time of their marriage, they never took up a job. Although an MIT graduate, never took up a job. What did they do? They rented out and later on they purchased a van, which became their home, habitat, where they would live. And in that van, the half of the van was filled with Srila Prabhupada books. They would travel around, distribute Prabhupada books, and whatever little profit earning will come, with that they would perform, or with that earning, they would live their life. His Holiness Ramapal Swami Maharaj was once sharing the example that how he went to the house of Madan Sundar and Pritushava Prabhu, and when he went there, he saw there was nothing in the house. Nothing for that reason, nothing in the house. There was no furniture. And at the night when he had to take rest, so Madan Sundar brought him the sleeping bag. However, he got to know that there were only 2 sleeping bags in the house, one for the husband, one for the wife. There was not even a sleeping bag for the guest. So Mother Dankeli gave her own sleeping bag to Maharaj and she slept on the floor. So Maharaj was glorifying that this is something happened around 85, 86, and this is what he was telling us around 2010. And he said, even if I have to go today, I'll find the same thing, but I dare not to go again. Because I'm afraid if I go, I will become the cause of inconvenience. But he was making a point, and I've personally heard from Mother Dankeli, I mean, the purity of her speech and how she affects the heart is incredible, amazing. So that's what all their life they have had a longest preaching program at University of Urbana-Champaign, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where they rented out a house and every week they would have a preaching program. Imagine they were running a preaching program and feeding the guests who would come while they did not have any fixed source of income. They just distributed and depended on Srila Prabhupada books, and whatever earning came with that, they managed their family affairs. They had no child, nothing. In one sense, this is perfect renunciation. That is what somewhat is being highlighted in text number 3. Now, text number 4 onwards discussion comes. Text number 4 talks about the way of living for a grahastha, and text number 5 talks about way of living for a sannyasi. Let's take a look. What is text number 4 translation? I'll read the translations now. Text number 4 says, when there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of carts and beds? When one can use his own arms, what is the necessity of pillow? When one can use the palms of his hand, what is the necessity of utensils? When there is ample covering or skins of the trees, what is the necessity of clothing? So Srila Prabhupada mentions this verse is not encouraging that we should go back and live a life like an animal in the forest. That's not the idea here. Prabhupada writes in the purport. The very first line Prabhupada writes, the necessities of life for the protection and comfort of the body must not be unnecessarily increased. That is the whole objective of this verse. It should not be unnecessarily increased. Why? Human energy is spoiled in a vain search after such illusory happiness. However, Prabhupada says in the purport, this does not mean that human civilization should revert to animal life or should live naked in the jungles without any culture, education, sense of morality. That's not the point. But in fact, the point is the idea that Shri Sukdev Goswami gives here is that we should reserve human energy, which is far superior to that of animals and should simply be utilized for self-realization. All of us would have an experience when we are struggling with roti kapda makan, which means, kutumba bharanenava, maintaining family affairs, when we have to go out and work, deal with financial matters and whatnot, how much human energy gets consumed there? How much of a mental energy is more or less always fixed on, would I get promotion? Would I get more salary? Oh, how much other person got? Oh, look, so many times I have seen even these sadhakas, even the grihasthas who are practicing Krishna consciousness, yet their competitive mentality doesn't do. Oh, look at the other householder. What a nice furniture they've got, such a big car they've got. And like that, they keep on spending their life envying each other or finding or doing comparison. So here it is said, forget all that, it's all illusory, it's useless. That's not going to give us happiness. So focus on this verse by Sukdev Goswami is find out the bare necessity and live with that. So rest of the human energy can be utilized for Krishna consciousness. Now a warning for sadhus, sannyasis or brahmacharis for that reason. Renunciates, text number 5. What should be the lifestyle of renunciates? Are there no torn clothes lying on the common road? Do the trees which exist for maintaining others no longer give alms in charity? Do the rivers, being dried up, no longer supply water to the thirsty? Are the caves of the mountains now closed? Or above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? Why then do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? So, very beautiful purport actually, a must read for all the renunciates. The very first time Prabhupada writes, the renounced order of life is never meant for begging or living at the cost of others as a parasite. The renounced order is meant for contributing something substantial to society and not depending on the earnings of the householder. Which means we should not become a burden to the society on the name of a renunciate and go door to door beg for one's own livelihood, which unfortunately became at many places, and many people took this path of renunciation as a means of livelihood. On the contrary, what should be the lifestyle? On the contrary, acceptance of alms from the householders by the bona fide mendicant is an opportunity afforded by the saint or mendicant for the tangible benefit of the donor. In other words, a sadhu, we were discussing last evening also, varnashrama dharma, the 4 varnas which are described, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, all these varnas, the foundation is service. Even if you become a sannyasi, which is the highest order, yet the sannyasi is expected to be the highest or the biggest servant, the one who serves. So in Vedic hierarchy, how does the Vedic hierarchy compares with the material hierarchy or the modern day hierarchy? Let's consider pyramid. In Vedic hierarchy, the more you go up, you have more people down to serve. That is called as Vedic hierarchy. Your propensity to serve increases, therefore you rise up to the ladder. You rise up to the ladder means you are blessed to take up more and more service opportunity. What is material hierarchy? Material hierarchy also can be compared to a pyramid where the person from the bottom, when he rises, then he has more and more people under him for exploitation. That is called as material hierarchy. In material hierarchy, material consciousness, people exploit, and in Vedic hierarchy or spiritual hierarchy, there is no concept of exploitation, but only of seva. So sadhu or renunciate, their only objective is to serve. Even if they go to the house of a congregation, let's say Bhiksham Dehi, that should be for the purpose of educating them on the purpose, on the ways of spiritual living. That is the subject matter of the 5th verse, like that. Beautiful purports, please mark it. These are some high-class purports, should be read out leisurely as you have time. Now, what is the result? Text number 6, what should be, when you're living a life like this, simple living, which has been described. So, just is not about living. While living a simple life, we should also engage in service. And when we engage in service of the Lord, then what is the result? This is text number 6. Samsara hetu paramamscha yatra. Such a person who, while living in a way which is being described, engages, performs devotional service, samsara hetu paramamscha, he goes beyond the samsara chakra, becomes fixed in transcendence. That is a point here. Can I have, oh, I don't think so, you could see the presentation, fine. Okay, I would need one reading partner so that I will show the highlighted things and devotee can read out. Who would like to read? Okay, so let's begin with Vasanta Murli Mataji, and then we see the hands of other mothers also. And K. Praman, 1958. Looks like Prabhu is also raising hand. So those who would like to read, they can raise their hand, and I'll call you upon gradually. Okay. So let's read some of Prabhupada's beautiful purpose. Where is Vedavesh? We go like this. Yes. So what should be done? We should engage in the service to the Lord. Prabhupada writes something very beautiful. This is 6 verse, right? In the purport Prabhupada says, yeah, every living and a living being. Please, mother, go ahead reading up to here.
Okay.
Yes, mother.
Every living being. Can you hear, Prabhuji?
Yes, you
Every
are.
living creature is engaging in the service of something else. A living being's constitutional position is to render service. But in the atmosphere of Maya or illusion, or the conditional state of existence, the conditioned soul seeks the service of illusion. A conditioned soul works in the service of his temporary body, bodily relatives like the wife and children, and the necessary paraphernalia for maintaining the body and bodily relations, such as the house, land, wealth, society, and country. But he does not know that all such renderings of service are totally illusion.
How illusionary? Srila Prabhupada describes in the purport and gives an example of mirage. When somebody is thirsty, is walking in the desert, he sees at the distance a reflection of water, which is called as mirage. It's only a reflection, it doesn't exist there. And he continues to remain thirsty. That is how this is happiness is illusory, like a mirage. And then Prabhupada gives a very beautiful example of a baby. In here, 1861. Yeah, this is very beautiful example explaining about how we have become disobedient to the Lord, and yet Lord, like our loving mother and father, continues to provide for us. Mother, please read out this.
The baby in the lap of his mother is naturally attached to the mother, and the mother is attached to the child. But when the child grows up and becomes overwhelmed by circumstances, he gradually becomes detached from the mother. Although the mother always expects some sort of service from the grown-up child and is equally affectionate towards her child, even though the child is forgetful. Similarly, because we are part and parcel of the Lord is always affectionate to us, and he always tries to get us back home, back to the Godhead. But we, the conditioned souls, do not care for him and run instead after the illusory bodily connections. We must therefore extricate ourselves from all illusory connections of the world and seek reunion with the Lord, trying to render service unto him, because he is the ultimate truth. Actually, we are hankering after him as the child seeks the mother. And to search out the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we need not go anywhere else, because the Lord is within our hearts. This does not suggest...
Yeah, this is fine. I mean, of course, this is a fantastic purport. Only thing is, we'll not have time to finish the chapter. So please, we're giving you some synopsis. Read it at your leisure. Very, very beautiful purpose in this chapter. Like that, Prabhupada talks. And now comes the text number 7, where Sukadeva Goswami comments, what kind of people do not take to the shelter of the Lord? Only materialists. This is equivalent to Bhoga Aishwarya Prasaptanam Taya Aparat Chetasam. Please read out the translation, Mother Vasanti.
Who else but the gross materialist will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as a consequence of acquiring the result of their own work. Taking to the non-permanent names also includes to devatas. As we discussed, when there is Naimatika Pralaya, then up to celestial, up to Swargaloka, everything is drowned and destroyed. Similarly, at Prakritika Pralaya, when Brahma's lifespan is completed, this whole material universe is destroyed and fragments back again into earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, force, even when it finally merges into Mahavishnu, then even Brahma does not survive. So that is said, these are non-permanent names. And what to speak about somebody who's counting on the doctors or the family members or friends to protect him.
What to do?
Non-permanent dreams are demigods, Prabhuji.
Huh?
Are they demigods, non-permanent names?
Yes, that's what non-permanent names also refers to Devtas here, because they are also not eternal in this creation. So Prabhupada highlights like this: fools worship demigods and therefore they suffer, which is also subject matter of Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, 9th chapter talks about it. Text number 8 onwards. Now the theme changes a little bit. After describing how Karmakanda is useless, from 8th verse onwards, now Sukdev Goswami from verse number 8 to verse number 11 will talk about Dharana Ashra for an advanced yogi. And what is a Dharana Ashra for an advanced yogi? That is Paramatma. So text number 8 to text number 11 will give us the vision of Paramatma. The beautiful form of Paramatma is described in text number 8 to text number 11. Mother Indhu Radhika, Mother, you can read out text number 8 to text number 11 translation. Please read out.
Hare Krishna, yes, Prabhu. Others conceive of the personality of Godhead residing within the body in the region of the heart and measuring only 8 inches with 4 hands carrying a lotus, a wheel of chariot, a conch shell, and a club respectively. 9. His mouth expresses his happiness. His eyes spread like the petals of a lotus, and his garments yellowish with like the saffron of a kadamba flower are bedecked with valuable jewels. His ornaments are all made of gold, set with jewels, and he wears a glowing headdress and earrings. 10. His feet are placed over the walls of the lotus-like hearts of great mystics. On his chest is the Kaustubha jewel, engraved with a beautiful calf, and there are other jewels on his shoulders. His complete torso is garlanded with fresh flowers. 11. He is well decorated with an ornamental wreath about his waist and rings studded with valuable jewels on his fingers. His leglets, his bangles, his oil hair, curling with the bluish tint, and his beautiful smiling face are all very pleasing.
Text number 12.
The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glancing of his smiling face are all indications of his extensive benedictions. One must therefore concentrate on this transcendental form of the Lord as long as the mind can be fixed on him by meditation.
Hare Krishna. So now here in text, this is a brief description of the Paramatma form. Text number 12. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and his glowing glancing of his smiling face are all indications of his extensive benedictions. Very interesting discussion that happens in the purport. And the Prabhupada focuses on about the journey of impersonalists versus devotees. The impersonalists, because they are searching for absolute truth. They don't know yet who is an absolute truth. Something like Atri Muni, which we'll read about, I believe in the 4th canto, the reference comes about Atri Muni. He doesn't know about the absolute truth. They're searching. Therefore, if they don't know who's an absolute truth, how can you take shelter of absolute truth? So therefore, the success for impersonalist to fight with a Maya is on and on, which is very, very difficult. However, for a devotee is always taking shelter of Srimati Radharani and Lord Shri Krishna and being protected by their grace. Just like Krishna says, Devi Yeshaganamai Mama Maya Daratya. For devotee to go beyond, either be impersonalist or a devotee, everyone has to struggle with what we call as anartha. Anartha nivritti for a devotee is far easier than even for an impersonalist. For an impersonalist to go beyond anartha nivritti is lifetimes project. Could take hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes. And one of the biggest anartha, which Prabhupada focuses and is generally the biggest anartha, is sex desire. It's not possible. It is literally impossible to rise above the sex desire. And why sex desire is so difficult? Because as long as you have a body, there are some contamination of the modes of material nature. And this is the desire which has latched onto this material world. So Prabhupada focuses only through the process of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is all about purification of consciousness, which is very quick. Through that, one can transcend or one can tolerate, less not about transcending at this point, but one can tolerate the sexual urges and then gradually continue on rendering service and get purified to an extent. When one begins to get the experience of Krishna's grace, then it naturally loses taste for any material enjoyment. So that is comparatively easier, quite easier. That's the focus. And then text number 13 onwards, the process of meditation is described. Text number 13 talks about for advanced yogi, and text number 14 talks about for neophyte yogi. Text number 30 says, the process of meditation should begin from the lotus feet of the Lord, and then it should progress to the smiling face. Meditation should be concentrated upon the lotus feet, and like that, gradually person becomes purified. This is all about Ashtang Yoga, Ashtang Yogi who's meditating on the Paramatma feature. However, those who are too engrossed in sense gratification, Prabhupada writes in the purport, cannot be allowed to participate in Archana or to touch the transcendental form of Shri Radha and Krishna. For them, it is better to meditate upon the gigantic Virat Rupa of the Lord as recommended in the next verse. And then text number 14 talks about those gross metalists who does not have any level of purity. For them to meditate on the Lord and purify themselves, they should start with meditating on the Virat Rupa of the Lord. And then in the purport, Prabhupada writes some beautiful point. Let's take a look at it. Text number 14 purport. And 15, 14, right? So 14 purport, at the end purport writes, one is advised here. So we can have, who else do we have? Mother Gokila. Please go ahead, read the highlighted portion on the screen.
One is advised here. One is advised herewith to meditate upon the Virat Rupa specified in the previous chapters in order to understand how the different planets, seas, mountains, rivers, birds, beasts, and human beings, demigods, and all that we can conceive are but different parts and limbs of the Lord's Virat form. This sort of thinking is also a type of meditation on the absolute truth. And as soon as such meditation begins, one develops one's godly qualities, and the whole world appears to be a happy and peaceful residence for all the people of the world. Without such meditation on God, either personal or impersonal, all good qualities of human being become covered with misconceptions regarding his constitutional position. And without such advanced knowledge, the whole world becomes a hell for the human being.
One thing is clear. This is Prabhupada repeats often in his purpose. Makes a point that how if somebody is meditating on the Lord, remembering the Lord or worshipping the Lord, but naturally, regardless of personalist or impersonalist, he will become compassionate. He'll become kind-hearted. So those who are claiming in the world today that we are followers of so and so God, and on the name of God they're doing violence, you can understand there is no bigger atheist than them. That on the name of violence on the name of God they're committing violence because they don't show and they lack any sense of compassion. Anyways, moving forward, so this was described about the advanced yogi and the neophyte Ashtang yogi, their process of meditation. Now from text number 15 onwards, discussion happens about the departure of this yogi. How does the advanced yogi prepares for his departure? And similarly, how does a neophyte yogi prepares for his departure? The mukti, which is gradually achieved by a neophyte yogi, is called as krama mukti. Krama mukti means gradual mukti. An advanced yogi, how does he attain mukti? Which is described from text number 15 to text number 21. We'll just read out. This is something like similar to what Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter also a little bit. So how does it happen is being described. So who would like to read Mother Sonali? Okay, then I'll come to Mother Varsha and then other devotees who are there. Let me show the screen. Text number 15 translation. Please go ahead.
In the Bhagavad Gita 8.4.
No, translations.
Okay. O king, whenever the yogi desires to leave this planet of human beings, he should not be perplexed about the proper time or place, but should comfortably sit without being disturbed, and regulating the life air should control the senses by the mind.
Text number 16. What happens then?
Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities.
So what it means of merging when a language like this is being utilized, Merging means becoming one in purpose with the Lord. When the living entity has given up on his own separate, diverse plans for enjoyment in this world, and when living entity becomes one in purpose with Guru and Gauranga, that is what it means merging. That's the point being Prabhupada explains in the purport. Text number 17.
In that transcendental stage of Labdha Pashanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures, and what to speak of any supremacy of the demigods themselves. Nor is there the mode of material goodness, passion, or ignorance, nor even the false ego, material causal ocean, or material nature.
Text number 18.
The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, a pure devotee in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities, but worship the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart.
So, what are the features of a devotee is being described here, or this advanced yogi is being described here? A very, very important purport where Prabhupada talks about these features in details. He mentions 8 points about it, not 8 points, 5 points in this purport. First, such a person perfectly understands Brahma. Not Brahma, Brahman. I'm giving you a summary of the purport. He wants to only attain liberation. Second, third, he rejects what is not connected with the Supreme Personality of God. And fourth, is free from all kinds of confusion. And fifth, he worships the lotus feet of the Lord in one's heart. And then what happens? Text number 19, Sat Chakra Yoga has been described. So how does this Ashtang Yogi, advanced Ashtang Yogi, leaves his body? How does he prepare for it? Please read out text number 19 translation.
By the strength of scientific knowledge, one should be well situated in absolute realization and thus be able to extinguish all material desires. One should then give up the material body by blocking the air hole through which stool is evacuated with the heel of one's foot, and by lifting the life air from one place to another in the 6 primary places.
And that continues the next verse, raising the air. This is called Sat Chakra, starting from Mooladhara to Agnya Chakra. Continue.
The meditative devotee should slowly push up the
So
life.
please, just a disclaimer, this is referring to an advanced yogi. None of us have to do it. This Sat Chakra Yoga becomes activated in a devotee when he sits down with a straight back during Brahma Muhurta time and chants Hare Krishna loudly. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This was asked to Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada said, no, we don't have to follow this Kundalini. It's also called as Kundalini Yoga, Sat Chakra Yoga. Sit with a straight back and meditate on the sound, holy sounds, the secret sounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And then when your mind becomes attentive, then this Kundalini rises, which has been discussed here, which is naturally happens. Here the yogi, can you imagine how much endeavor he has to do to raise his Kundalini or the chakras, consciousness from Mooladhara up to the head? This is very difficult for a devotee, is but natural. And for some of us, it might be happening and we don't know also. Such is the glory of it. I'll continue reading it.
The meditative devotee should slowly push up the life air from the navel to the heart, from there to the chest, from there to the root of the palate. He should search out the proper places with intelligence.
And then what he does, text number 21.
Thereafter, the bhakti yogi should push the life air up between the eyebrows and then blocking the 7 outlets of the life air. He should maintain his aim for going back home, back to Godhead. If he is completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, he should then reach the cerebral hole and give up his material connections, having gone to the Supreme.
How does it sound? I mean, we cannot sit and chant. There's no question of we can do this, isn't it? What is happening is he has to push the life air, which is prana vayu, bring it to the eyebrows, then block all the 7 outlets and the genitals. He should maintain his aim. The goal should be fixed, concentrated, going back to Godhead. If there is a condition, if it refers to conditional loop, right? If conditional loop means the condition is not met, you go back. If If he is completely free from all desires of material enjoyment, then what happens? He should then reach the cerebral hole, raise his pranavayu to the cerebral hole called as Agnya Chakra, and give up his mental connections and bhedate hue, and penetrating this hole, he should leave his material body, and then it's like a rocket launch, goes back to Vaikuntha. But in between, if he sees a Kadam Kanan, what is that special celestial forest of Swarga, and any old desires manifest, sorry, kitni khoobsurat sarai hai. Then again he crash lands into Swargaloka. That's the risk here. Alright? But when a devotee goes under the security of Vishnu Dutas, who does not allow to see him here and there. And devotees are always under the protection of devotees. Text number 22. But what about the yogi with the material desires? Now the Karma Mukti is described from text number 22 to 32. I will not read here because our time is about to close. Rather than I'll show you through the presentation what it works or what it means like that. Okay, let me just come to the presentation, and I hope, is it visible? Yes, visible. So just a quick recap of what we have done, and then we'll come to the subject matter of what we're discussing right now. So far we had our discussion on the subject matter of Karma Kanda, rejected. We should not endeavor too hard for material gain, rather maintain body and soul together. That's what being described here so far. No torn clothes and like that. And then there's a discussion about the yogi, his dharana ashraya, the soul of the Paramatma was described. This is the size of the Paramatma, this is how the Paramatma looks like. All that was described. The chest, the torso, ornamental wreath, everything was described about Paramatma. And then Ashtang Yoga. So what is Ashtang Yoga, which we have discussed in the previous chapter also? Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara, and then Dharana. And then Dharana gets divided depending on if you still have material desires or no. If you have desire, then Dharana Ashraya is, if no desire, then Dharana Ashraya is Paramatma. If you still have desires, then Dharana Ashraya is Virat Roop, attached yogi. But when that devotee, when that practitioner through his dhyana or dharana of Virat Purush gets purified, come to a stage of no desire, then he is asked to meditate on Paramatma. And then those who meditate on Paramatma, then they attain the stage of dhyana, samadhi, and finally Brahman realization. That is their way of elevation. But for one who is not able to really purify himself of all material desires, then what happens to him? He goes to Vaishnavara Loka. Shishumara Loka refers to the Dhruva planet, then Mahallok, Brahmalok. Then, so this is what has been described from text number 20 to 32. One who still have material desires, how does he progresses? Then he goes gradually from the earthly planet to Vaishnavara Loka, then to Shishumara Loka. This refers to another name for the Dhruva planet. And then from there to Mahallok, Brahmalok, like that. And then he goes and resides in Brahmalok. This is not like in one lifetime happening. Every time he has to keep on changing. And it's not that in next lifetime he would be able to go ahead. It depends on how much level of purity he has attained. When you have to go up, more and more purity has to be there. Finally, he comes to Brahmaloka, and then when he ends in Brahmaloka, then this is all called as Krama Mukti, gradual liberation. When he comes to Brahmaloka, at that point of time, if he succeeds in his process of meditation, Ashtang Yoga, then from there he can directly go to Brahman. Again, go to Brahman. How can he go to Brahman? At that point of time, he will have to penetrate through earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, the covering of this material universe by his own endeavors. And then he goes beyond the material world. Or else, he can decide to spend time with Brahmaji. At the end of Brahma's life, when this material universe is naturally collapsed, destroyed, that time, just like Brahmaji goes back to Godhead, similarly, this person can go back to Brahman. This is what is the whole process described in text number 22 to 32. And after describing this, probably I'm guessing, Sukadeva Goswami would have seen the despondency on Parikshit Maharaj's face, and I'm pretty sure all those aspirants of Ashtang Yoga, those who are proponents of Ashtang Yoga, they would have understood the mess they are getting into it. How difficult is Ashtanga Yoga. Therefore, text number 33 onwards, Sukadeva Goswami begins to give the conclusion. And what is the conclusion, Sukadeva Goswami says? And he says, conclusion is, sadhana bhakti is best of all paths. And he describes, nahi atunya shiva panta vishataha samsrata viha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yoga yato bhavet. Very beautiful verse. Nahi atunya shiva panta. There is no other auspicious path. Vishataha samsrata viha, to go beyond samsara, to go beyond the material creation. There is no other auspicious path than Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yogo Yato Bhagavat. Then Bhakti Yoga. There is no other auspicious path. Bhakti Yoga is the most auspicious path, which means the most easiest path, and therefore the purport focuses on rendering devotional service should be the goal of human form of life. And then in text number 34, the verdict of Brahmaji is quoted by Sukadeva Goswami. And he says, yeah, the verdict is not given in the presentation, no problem. Let me quote the verdict from the Vedas. One quick second. And what is the verdict of Brahmaji? So Sukadeva Goswami quotes a verdict of Brahmaji in text number 34, and he speaks as follows. Text number 34. And he says, Bhagavan Brahma kasnena tir anvikshya manishya tad adhyavasyat rupastho ratir atman yato bhavet. 3 times, thrill, anvikshya manishya, the intelligent person Brahmaji, 3 times he read the whole Vedic scriptures. How many of you have read 3 times Bhagavad Gita? Raise your hands. Okay, then you follow what is being taught by Prabhupada. We cannot read 3 times Bhagavad Gita. Brahmaji read 3 times the whole Vedic scriptures, which is equivalent to 100 crore verses. How many? 100 crore verses. This is for earthly planet. On Brahma Loka, just like Mahabharata, if Mahabharata is 1 lakh verses here, in heavenly planets, that Mahabharata is almost 1 billion shlokas. Like that is the size of the scriptures. Similarly, Ramayana is 24,000 shlokas here. Ramayana, which is narrated in the Loka. See, the reason is why the scriptures are longer there, where people have more capacity to hear. We are so restless, we are done after 1 hour class. We don't wait even for 1 hour class. Some of us are so restless after 5 minutes only, we have to get up 10 times, go to the bathroom, wash our face, come back. Khatam nahi hua abhi tak. Keep looking at the watch. Oh, 5 minutes more to go. 3 minutes, as if rocket launch is about to happen. So therefore the scriptures are, or the texts are, historical narrations are a little longer in the heavenly planets as compared to earthly planets. So Brahmaji read 3 times. The great personality Brahma, with great attention, concentration on the mind, studied the Veda 3 times. And what was his conclusion? He ascertained Ratiratman yato bhavet. Ratiratmani, which means attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the highest. That was the conclusion of Brahmaji. So now text number 35 talks about how can we see the Lord? And a very beautiful purport where Prabhupada mentions 8 points systematically how to make advancement in Krishna consciousness, how to come to the platform to see the Lord. It's an homework for all of you to read it. It's a big purport, it will take a time. I'll just give you a summary. Bhagavan sarva bhuteshu lakshita swatmana hari drasher vidya drashta lakshane anuma pakahe. Madhavasya, if you're there, you can read out the translation, please.
Yes, Prabhuji. The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence.
Please read the highlighted portion of the purport.
Yes. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized sense. But when one is convinced of presence of Lord by the practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is a form of guidance by the Paramatma, a plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize. Even for the common man, the procedure is as follows.
And the procedure is a homework for all of you to read, where Prabhupada mentions 8 steps to realize the Lord. And now, text number 36. Therefore, now the conclusion, Sukadeva Goswami is coming to the conclusion, which he had given in the 5th verse, Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagwan Ishvara Hari. Once again, at the end of this discussion of Ashtang Yogis and Karmakandis, once again, Sukadeva Goswami reiterates the same conclusion. He says, Tasma Sarvatmana Rajan Hari Sarvatra Sarvada Shotavya Kititavyascha Smartavyo Bhagavananam. The same conclusion. It is therefore essential that every human being must hear about, glorify, remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Prabhupada writes a very beautiful purport on the importance of Shravanam. And he quotes Prahlad Maharaj, the 9 limbs, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. The bhakti begins, the remembrance begins with hearing. So we should have a solid hearing program. And as strong as our hearing program, to that degree, strong will be our chanting program. I'll show you the line. This is very important actually. Oftentimes people miss out. They think I have taken a vow to chant 16 hours. By hook and crook, I can finish my 16 hours before midnight and I am following the vows that I have taken or given to my spiritual master. No, that's not the fact. Hearing is solidified by the process of chanting. His Holiness Ramapad Maharaj, I have attended a few of his Japa retreats back in America in those days. He would always make a point. The quality of chanting is determined by a quality of hearing. As attentively you hear, to that degree, your chanting improves. And as you chant attentively, to that degree, attentively you hear. There's a symbiotic, interdependent relationship between the two. And therefore, Prabhupada gave both the things in the early morning program. You chant, and then you have a Bhagavatam class, like that. So that's the point here. Why hearing is so important? Because through hearing, all our misconception goes away. Our material desire goes away. And when we have a clarity of thought, when our heart gets purified, then only to that degree we'll be able to chant attentively the names of the Lord, and rest of the success follows after that. And when somebody does like this, what happens? There are 2 benefits. One who follows this process of Bhakti Yoga, which is so simple, just begins with hearing and chanting. What is the result? Pibanti bhagavatatmanah satam kathamritam shravanaputeshu samratam punanti te vishaya vidushitashayam Prajanti tacharana sarorvantikam. Pibanti means pina. One who drinks kathamritam, the nectar of Krishna Katha, through his ear holes, not through his mouth, but through his ear holes. One who drinks the nectar of Krishna Katha, what happens? Punanti te vishaya vidushitashayam. From all the contamination, vishaya means sense objects, vidushi, all that contamination of a consciousness, that is attraction to the sense objects, dissipates. Punanti gets purified. Vajanti tacharana sarorvantikam. And then what happens when we are purified of all the contamination of our heart, that is attraction for the sense objects? Vrajanti tacharana. Then you attain Vrajadham. Then you get the opportunity to go home, back to Godhead. Saror antikam, like that. Or in other words, you attain the lotus feet of the Lord. Like that, it is mentioned. Mother Varsha, you can read out the translation.
Yes, Prabhuji. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotee, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
So the suffering of human society, yesterday morning we were discussing in our forum here, a very, very, very beautiful point as well as Radhanath Maharaj mentions. He says, the suffering is all because of false ego. And look what Prabhupada writes in the very first line of the purport. The sufferings of human society are due to polluted aim of life, namely lording over the material resources. What is false ego? False ego gives us this identity, right? I am the controller, proprietor, and enjoyer. So this whole idea or desire of lording over the material nature is the cause of all our sufferings. So I was making a point yesterday with our devotees also. If you ever seen any devotee with Rota Pirta Chehra, if you see the natural bliss is missing from the face of the devotee, understand this desire of lording over is becoming more and more stronger in that devotee. Which means the false ego is becoming more and more prominent, and the more we have false ego, to that degree we suffer, and to that degree we become disconnected from Krishna consciousness. So to put it other way around, if you see the natural smiling face of devotees, which means they are properly situated in Krishna consciousness. Pranadapi Sulichena Taropi Saishnu. And if you all reflect, go back in your memory lane and reflect back, think when you were struggling or when you were disturbed, you will see somewhere, somehow it was my false ego was the cause of it. So to get purified of this false ego, this is called as polluted aim of life. Therefore, it is said through the hearing and chanting and rendering devotional service to the Lord is the easiest means to get freed from the polluted aim of life, that is lording over the material nature. Ashtang Yogis, the Jnanis, they attempt their best, but their practice actually does not destroy the false ego, but in fact strengthens the false ego, because the more they advance, the more they think they are becoming the Lord, which means their competitive spirit becomes more and more stronger. Like that's the point here. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, very beautiful point. Prabhupada says, Krishna Chandrapur, if you're there, if you'd like to read, you can read the highlighted portion. From the purport. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhu.
Yes.
The highest perfectional thinking for human society is suggested here by Sukadeva Goswami, namely sufficiently hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. For men in this age of Kali, when they have lost the perfect version of life, thus Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchlight by which to see the real path. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada has commented on the Kathamrita mentioned in the verse and has indicated Srimad Bhagavatam to be the nectarian message of the personality of Godhead. By sufficient hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, the polluted aim of life, namely lording it over matter, will subside, and the people in general in all parts of the world will be able to live a peaceful life of knowledge and bliss.
So there is no question of conflict between devotees. The conflict between devotees arises because of false ego. Getting it? Therefore, if there is a conflict, how can you live a peaceful life? Peaceful life of knowledge and bliss is not possible. So that's the whole background to this, why we struggle. And a very beautiful concluding paragraph. Please read out.
Conclusion, Prabhu?
Yes, the last paragraph.
Yeah. Thus, by the process of Bhakti Yoga, directly accepted as suggested in this verse, by sufficient hearing of the transcendental message of the Lord, the material contamination is directly eliminated without once attempting to contemplate the impersonal Virat conception of the Lord.
So, just a pause. So, this is what happens. By Bhakti Yoga, this is directly happen. But somebody may say, "Arey, I am practicing Bhakti Yoga. I don't see any difference." Prabhupada says that is your fault. Please read the last line now.
and by practicing Bhakti Yoga, if the performer is not purified from the material contamination, he must be a pseudo devotee. For such an impostor, there is no remedy for being freed from material entanglement. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the second canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord in the Heart.
So with this, we come to the conclusion of the second chapter. So far, Sukadeva Goswami had described about the people who are like Ashtang Yogis, who are Karma Kandis, like that. Now in third chapter, Sukadeva Goswami will talk about the activities of those who are not intelligent at all. So, intelligent beings are the devotees. And then there are certain yoga practitioners, Ashtang Yogis. But now, Sukadeva Goswami will talk about those who are not at all intelligent. So, those who are not intelligent, what they do? They choose the path of demigod worship. That will be the discussion of chapter 3, demigod worship, pure devotional worship versus pure devotional service. And finally, the conclusion of the subject matter of what is the duty of a dying man. Like that, chapter 3 will end. And then the 4th chapter onwards, the discussion will begin on Srishti. How did this creation came into existence? The living entity who is all pure in his eternal constitutional position as Satchit Ananda, how this living entity got covered over by the modes of material nature. Does Lord, when he descends into this material world, does he also get covered over by the modes of material nature? Like that, there will be many, many beautiful questions asked in the 4th chapter and then later on the 7th chapter. 4th chapter would largely focus on Srishti. How did this creation happen? And then 7th chapter would have almost 10-15 questions, which forms the basis of the rest of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we'll see as we proceed ahead through our discussion of the 2nd canto. With that, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Any clarifications, any questions, or any comments? Hare Krishna. Mother Poonam, you have a hand up? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. Thank you
Yes.
for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. We just learned today about the Ashtanga Yoga, and in one purport, it's declared that once till the time your material desires are all finished, you cannot achieve the liberation. So I'm just wondering, how did Dhritarashtra got liberation through Ashtanga Yoga? Means his full life is in the material sense enjoyment, and by the end of his life he was engaged in the material
Ashtanga.
desires.
Correct. By the mercy of Vidura, and the chastisement of Vidura was so heavy, and he had already gone through a lot of suffering of losing all his 100 sons and everything. So he had already seen the harsh reality of life. And then when Vidura came and spoke to him, the final knots of attachment which was there in his heart also broke. Therefore, because he was able to lit up the fire within his body through his mystic yoga, which he attained within just 7 days of practice, which proves that Dhritarashtra became purified of his desires. Otherwise, it wasn't possible. So the words of wisdom spoken by Vidurji were powerful enough to cut the remaining knots in the hearts of Dhritarashtra. Otherwise, Dhritarashtra would not even have left for the jungle. Person like Dhritarashtra can never leave for jungle, but he left, which indicates that he actually finally became detached. All right?
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So, आप सभी भक्तों का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आज के सत्र में भाग लेने के लिए. All right, we'll continue our technical discussion, 3rd chapter onwards, next week onwards. Hare Krishna. We'll conclude for today.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
No, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Dandavat Pranam. Thank you